the mute off in the video, and then I'll plug in the. Okay. There. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome visitors, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and lead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and be seated. All right. I'll entertain a motion regarding approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Trustee Grissom, would you read the board's mission statement, please?
Sure. The LJSD Board of Trustees is an elected body of community members committed to serving with honesty and integrity, nurturing a relationship of trust. We hear the voice of our constituents and represent their views of our district. We provide oversight of taxpayer funds through fiscal accountability. We govern through developing, upholding, and advancing policy for the purpose of forging an academic consensus. We create and empower well-rounded citizens while respecting parental authority. We promote individualism, nurture talents, encourage passions, and provide opportunities within the LJSD community.
Thank you. Trustee Irons, would you like to read the district mission statement?
Certainly. Lakeland Joint School District's daily mission is to maximize student learning and to ensure every student is growing academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally every day in all environments.
Thank you. Moving on to announcements.
I have an announcement. I would like to make an announcement to inform the public that we will be having a special board meeting tomorrow at 2 at the request of the superintendent to discuss the potential emergency levy. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about that and that we were being open and upfront about that.
Thank you. And I would just like to remind everyone that our board meeting is our business meeting and it's held in public. This is not the public's board meeting. Moving on to action. Oh, patron input.
We don't have anyone that's signed in and I did not receive any via email.
Okay. I did receive an email that I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. Okay, it's from Michelle Higgins in Spirit Lake. Did all of you receive that email?
Yes.
All kinds of emails, so I don't know.
I hear you on that. Okay, she states that she watched the most recent board meeting on August 26, 2021. She wanted to begin by saying that she was very appreciative of the fact that we are starting the school year off with mask choices for students. She realizes that there's a certain percentage of the population who disagrees with us, but appreciates the board's decision to allow parents to make the choice for their children. In addition, she wanted to voice her concern for the elementary SEL curriculum that is up for approval. She notes that when she watched the meeting, we were not able to gain access to the website for some reason, and it was put on a later date for a decision. She states that SEL, social emotional learning, though it sounds awesome, who doesn't want their kids to be exposed to the social emotional learning? SEL is a Trojan horse for critical race theory, and the discussion during the board meeting concluded that CRT was not going to be taught by our teachers and brought into the classrooms. She asks us to please carefully consider approval of SEL now that most school administrators, school board members, and parents have caught on to the dangers of CRT. The proponents of this ideology are quickly changing the name in an attempt to keep us from realizing what is going on until it's too late. So I did respond and thank her for her input and suggested she come to tonight's board meeting.
I did receive that email.
Okay, great. With no other input, we'll move on to the action items. Before we move into the consent agenda, it's my understanding that we need to address the item I-10, Rathdrum Police Department MOU. That is an action item. Ms. Sexton, you want to come forward for that? Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Members of the board. At the last city council meeting, the city of Rathdrum approved the MOU between the school district and the police department. And I had given them the MOU that we used for the county sheriff's department. They made a couple of changes. One of probably the one big change was the language about when we can terminate the MOU. So initially our understanding was that we couldn't terminate it in the middle of the year, it would be the end of the year, and then at the city council meeting, that was when I realized it was 1 year's notice. But that only is if both parties don't agree. And I know that Trustee Bain has some knowledge and understanding of how city budgets work. And City Manager Ljsd is here from the city if you have specific questions of him. The one thing that I do want to say to the board is the benefit this to us is that if the city were to decide that they could no longer continue the program and we wanted to continue to have law enforcement officers at the two schools that are being served, it takes us a long time to go through the process of hiring an armed guard. So that protection that where if we didn't agree and we had a full year to kind of get our ducks in a row and make sure we had somebody qualified to take that on, is a positive thing because it gives us the time to do that. So, otherwise, the rest of the language is very much similar to the Cooney County.
Well, I do have a question on the whole 1 year in the sense of if we inform the city in say January or February, hey, we're not going to keep doing this. Does that mean we have to wait till January, February of the next year before the contract is canceled? Or can we have an out at the end of the school year? That's where I'm concerned.
Right. The way the language reads, and Leanne, if you want to come up here, the way the language reads is as long as we both agree, and the city's budget is set at a different time than ours. So if I went to Chief McLean in January and said, we're having another holdback and the budget is super tight and we can't do this, we need to terminate. If I went in January, then Tommy and I, if we came to an agreement that at the end of the year we were going to terminate, then that could happen. It's the way the language reads is if one party.
I get that. So going with your scenario, you and Tommy don't reach an agreement. Does that mean we are bound to pay until the following January?
That would be correct. And
Okay.
a lot of that is to do with the city's budget as well. Just as Lisa mentioned, for the benefit for the school district and trying to find a school resource officer, we're bound with paying a police officer the other portion of that. And if the school district terminates, and we're still 6 months away from our budget year end, then we have an additional expense on the city that we have to provide for the funding for that police officer for the rest of the time. And so that can create an issue where we might not have the funding to provide that funding. It also helps in the fact that if a police officer is being an SRO for the school and no basically a year left in the job, if the city doesn't pick up the rest of that percentage of their pay, then they would be laid off. It gives them an opportunity to find another job. In law enforcement, the job procurement process is a very, very lengthy process because we have to go through post-academy training for a police officer if they're hired and they don't have that training. And even if they do have that training, we have field training that has to go on throughout the course of up to 3 months from the time that they're hired onto the police force to actually be able to be on their own within the city. So we have a lot of time constraints, and that officer does too, as far as all those things happening. The city council is pretty adamant about that 1 year time frame because last year we did have a termination of the SRO program. And that SRO program, we picked up the difference on that police officer, and then we budgeted for the differences, we made different changes, and then when we were requested to have another SRO, the changes had already been made. And so we just want to make sure that there's a comfort level so that we don't have a quick change in the middle of our budget year.
And was this due to COVID with regard to the SRO termination?
That was the 6% pullback from the governor.
I mean, was this when we went into the pandemic, or was this last year?
Last year, we did not have the SRO.
Okay.
Because at the end of the 1920 school year, when we found out that we were having a 6% pullback, we tried to make as many cuts as we could, as far away from classrooms as we could. And at that time, the SRO, who was at Lakeland High School or Lakeland Middle School, had put in a request to Chief McLean to go back to patrol. So we thought we actually were helping the city because we assumed that they were going to also have pullbacks. So the part we didn't even think about was the additional dollars that we were providing that they were counting on that they weren't getting. But we pushed pause on that. And then last year in the summer, when we realized that we were getting some of that money back from the governor, and there was kind of moving around with the dollars, I did talk to Chief McLean to see if we could put that position back, but they'd already done their budget, they had already set their schedules, and so it didn't work last year. So we had to wait a full year to come back to it.
Okay. What is the city's budget?
Our fiscal year goes October 1 to September 30.
Okay,
That's a little different than ours.
okay. Thank you.
You bet.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody have any other questions?
Did we have legal counsel look over this, or is it just a standard?
The Cooney County Sheriff's Department had legal counsel look over the one that you signed,
Mhm.
and this is the same. So, but we did not have them look at that particularly.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Rob, do you have any questions?
Well, you answered my question. You asked my question. I was just curious if and the budget is, for the city, and really just trying to figure out. I mean, I can't imagine that we couldn't come to some sort of middle ground based on if something unforeseen happened based on the budget. That's what I was just trying to figure out. If you guys do the budgets, really. No, I don't have any questions. questions. I was just,
Okay,
I mean, we're a community, we work together.
we should be,
Obviously,
yes.
it's a good partnership,
Right.
and budgets are, it seems like, we should be able to find some middle ground before the following year budget is put together. So, in my perception is it's almost falls into school year to school year.
Well, and what we really hope for is a continuation with our relationship. Lisa and Tommy, the police chief, work really well together. Last year, totally understood the situations and therefore made the adjustments that we needed to do. But when it came back to saying, okay, we do have the funding, we had already completed our entire budgeting process and made the change. We felt that this way, with the exception of an emergency type of situation where we can always work together on, this would give both parties enough time to make good informed decisions on what to do with the future. You guys will have a different budget process than we do. We start our budgeting in March and we run through our budgeting process until we adopt our budget at the beginning of August, and then it goes into play in October. You probably follow the same state finance year with July 1, June 30. So you probably start your budgeting long before March. And, I imagine that as we work together on these different things, our whole city is trying to work with and, to have good relationships with the other jurisdictions within the county, whether it be the school district, the county, the highway districts, the state, and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of times we have to work together and change things together. But if it comes to like a budget crunch, we work through those before.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your input.
So if something were to happen, that the district got in the same bind, would that come back before the board so the board could make a decision to try and work something out or find a different resolution or no resolution?
Yes.
Or
So that's the intent of the monthly safety updates, because we had that issue last year with the city county. So at the first board meeting of each month, I will have a safety update, and if something were to happen, that would be when I would bring that to you.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Now, Chrissy, do you want me to entertain a motion now or wait until we're in the
That
eyes?
would be completely up to you. I think the discussion part of it's good. If you want to make a motion, then you could.
Okay.
Or ask for a motion.
Do any of the trustees need to have further conversation about the MOU?
No, I do not.
Maybe I just have a comment. If we do this again next year, and maybe we put that on the calendar, that maybe we make it a little bit more detailed in explaining some of the language in there that's sort of vague.
Okay.
But I mean, we're already into the school year. We need to do something. But some of it isn't really, I'm thinking if I'm a parent and I'm reading this, I don't know what qualifies as an emergency situation to release information of my student to law enforcement. And I don't know what qualifies for my student to be held in private with a police officer for questioning. So there's some things in here that I think maybe next year we need to make more specific, whether it's some kind of appendix or something like that, but I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay.
It's better than the one we started with.
And Trustee Grisham, we do have an interview and interrogation board policy that does address what you just talked about, so I'm not sure. I actually don't know. I think that would override the MOU, but I'm not positive.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
We do have a board policy on that.
Yeah, I realize that but I appreciate the input. Yeah, there's some other things that I think could be a little bit more clear. Thank you, Dr. Bird.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on the Rathdrum city MOU.
I move to approve the Rathdrum City,
Police Department.
Rathdrum Police Department MOU as presented.
I second the motion.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving back up to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the previous meeting and regular and special bills. Are there any comments or questions on, I'm going to go ahead and break them out. On the 8/26/2021 minutes.
I don't believe so. I thought I had something marked on one of them at one time.
Okay, and then on the 9/2 special board meeting minutes, are there any questions or comments on that one?
Not from me.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve, or I'll entertain a motion regarding the minutes of the previous meetings.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meetings, 8/26/2021 and 9/2 of 2021.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the regular and special bills. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding the bills that are being presented?
I just have a clarifying question. So I just want to make sure, there, most of these. So the district expenditures, regular school, these are all payments that have already gone out, correct? We approve after the fact?
Correct. And that's every school district I've worked for, that's typical across the state. And policies allow that. It's just every district has those, through our purchasing process, the POs, and just the process we do pay the bills. And then for transparency, as a public agency, they're always presented to the board for those things. But yes, I mean, if we had to wait, honestly, for the board to approve every invoice that was coming in, we couldn't do business.
So they're not warrants, they're actual checks. I was under the impression they were warrants. Didn't we have bills that were one time that were warrants and not checks?
Trustee Grissom, I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely, when I was in Washington, there are definitely warrants issued by the county. When I've been in Idaho, since Coeur d'Alene in this district, they've been checks through Wells Fargo.
Okay, because this.
So I guess we can get in. I could check with the bank to say officially what are they when they're generated. We get check stock. But the process of the bills, seeing them afterwards and approving the regular bills is a typical practice when I worked in California, when I work in Washington now for 2 Idaho school districts.
Mm-hmm. I know the statute, and I have to go back and find it, but I know the statute does make a deviation between warrants and checks and the way it's set up. But okay, I was under the impression we were always approving warrants for checks. I didn't realize we were approving bills that had already been paid. All right, my misunderstanding. I'll have to go back and find that. Okay.
And I totally understand that if we're only approving payment for expenses at our regular monthly meeting at the beginning of the month, it would take a month or more to send payments out.
Well, then what happens if we're not in agreement with paying something and we say we don't approve them? What happens then? They've already gone out the door.
Well, we've gone through the practice of our, doing purchase orders, signing agreements, and following those policies and procedures that are there, then the board has given approval for us to move forward so we can run business.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I know at the city, and I fully understand that city and school district is very different, and the city has council meetings every 2 weeks. But we do not send checks out until they are approved by council, and they go in the mail the very next day. They're prepared and they're ready to go out, but they're not released until they are approved by council. So, and I understand that if we do that here, because we only have our regular meetings once a month, and then we have the second one if it's needed, that it would take a lot longer to pay. I get that. I don't know. I guess I question after the fact approval.
I know we're everything. If you really have questions too, I encourage you to talk with ISBA and see if there's other districts that do approach it another way and how they might accomplish that. I mean, we're open to looking at other ways to do it if it would work for the board.
Okay, I just was curious. That was just a question that I had. Thank you.
And Randy, my perspective is that we're here to review them. And, if we see something that strikes us, we can reach out and have questions, because there are so many moving parts with the school district that staying ahead of that would be pretty difficult. But I think that more importantly, we get to review all of these, we get the information, we have the resources to and be, hold the school district accountable for what they're doing. Not necessarily ahead of the curve, but we get the opportunity to review those, to ask the questions, as a representative of our constituents. And so it does give the transparency so that people realize, hey, you know what? These are all the bills. I mean, it's just such a big machine, to run day in and day out. But my perspective is we're, checks and balances, that we're reviewing the stuff, and a lot of times we'll have questions. There'll be, a big amount or an odd thing, and just getting a clarification so that hear the explanation. And I think that's my perspective anyway.
Yeah, there's things on a monthly basis I don't see any problem with, but I think also that we do have an obligation, I know we have an obligation according to statute to approve certain things, because like Trustee Dane was saying, it's sort of an approval after the fact. And I mean, how do you hold somebody accountable when the checks already went out the door if the board didn't approve the expenditure? Not that that's happening, I'm just saying that, for instance, the fairway floor, and I know that the question came up, does this include, last time we were told about this being the district office, the question I believe was brought up about, does this include also Garwood, or maybe it was the Garwood flooring, and we asked if it would included the district office flooring. And I think we were told, yeah, it did, but now there's another bill on here for flooring for the DO specifically. So I think it's those kind of things that we need to have further explanation on. So then obviously last month's bill didn't include the flooring, then that was.
We had.
With two fairway flooring bills on here.
A project at Garwood for flooring, a project at Lakeland High School for flooring, and a project at the district district office.
Right.
So they, progress invoices as they go. And so some of those invoices, I mean, I can match the invoice with the payment if you want to get to that level of detail. We can provide that for you.
Yeah, I don't need that. It was just that when we asked last month about it, we thought that that was all the flooring. And then this popped up. It's fine. It's flooring, it's no big deal.
And I don't recall seeing too many contracts come through the board that the board's approving for purchasing. So you made the statement that the board's prior approval of the contract, if the board is in fact approving the contracts prior and then the bills are coming through, I totally get that check and balance, but.
Well, I believe what I was saying is, for example, if we're making a purchase of some technology supplies, that's within our policy for administration to go make that purchase to move forward by your policy. So your policy is sort of giving us approval to have the internal controls to make that purchase, is what I was saying.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay, because like when the 540,000 came through on the 1,400 Chromebooks, and that was a surprise to me, but it was on the equipment replacement that you had talked about, that we do it every 4 to 5 years or whatnot. So every year we're replacing Chromebooks that are.
We have 4,000 Chromebooks, and if we're on a 4-year cycle, there's 1,000 every year.
Right, but we're cycling it on a 4 to 5 year span. It's not every year we're replacing every single Chromebook.
Correct.
Is what I was trying to say. Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion on the regular and special bills.
I move to approve the regular and special bills as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to report and presentations. We have staff reports. Presentation for Stacy Croker of John Brown.
Please stand here.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for letting me come and present. My name is Stacy Croker. I'm the principal assistant at John Brown, which is just right here next door. So what I wanted to do is invite some of the students up, but first, because it's really about them, but first I want to just explain a little bit about what Jumpstart was. As you know, the board approved for us to have a 3-week learning program, which was a hands-on enrichment similar to a summer day camp for students to achieve the, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I'm used to working
You're
with
fine.
kids.
Just pretend.
Yeah, we're all 2-year-olds.
So the unfinished learning initiative, and really helping kids not to have such a dip with academics in the fall, which we know happens naturally. 3 months off in the summer is a long time. And when our fabulous teachers are pushing and pushing each day to make sure that we're assessing and benchmarking our monitoring and enriching, engaging, and then 3 months off.
Right.
So, and that's something that has always been the case. So Mrs. Schneff, our principal, and myself and our academic leadership team, we created a program, presented it to the board, and the board approved it. So, which is why I'm here. I would like to invite Bradley to come on up, and Jaden, and we have 2 Addies, Addie and Addie, and Nathan. And come on over. I'm just going to spread out so they can see all of your cute faces. So each of the students here attended Jumpstart, and they want to share a little bit about their experience. gave them a few items to think about, but feel free to ask additional questions. In the slideshow that was shared with you, it's on the agenda, there is parent feedback surveys that are linked in, actually a summary that's there, and then student feedback, of course. And then I highlighted just some of the key parent feedback that I thought was really helpful, that you would enjoy and take from this experience. So let's just start with my daughter, because we practiced a lot. Jaden, would you please tell the group, what did you enjoy about Jumpstart?
Well, I enjoyed basically having fun, and I also really enjoyed the third week, and I think everybody enjoyed the third week because all of the students in our class were hands-on, doing all the activities, and the third week was science. We were mad scientists. We got lab coats, we got everything, and the very last day we made ice cream.
Oh, cool.
And the one thing I really liked about the math problem and ice cream is because we were seeing how much salt we could put into the bag to rub it around. And it was 1 cup. So we were trying to calculate, and it was so tricky, but so much fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Next. Addie, what was your favorite part of Jumpstart? What did you like learning?
Science and math.
Can you tell us about it a little bit?
What I liked about science was when we did the ice cream, and about math we were solving when one girl was running a few miles and the other was running another mile, and they both went different ways.
Thank you, Addie. And who would you like to go next?
My favorite part was when we were doing ice cream and of course, and I loved the whole thing, and it was so much fun.
It was so much fun. Addie, can you tell us a little bit about what the different weeks were? We talked about science. What else did we have at Jumpstart? Well, let me rephrase that. We talked about the math scientist, week 3, but what were the other weeks?
The first week was kind of like writing, I believe.
So reading and writing about the Olympics.
And the second week was, I forgot.
Okay, does anybody remember what week 2 was about? Do you remember anything?
Oh, it was about wasn't it about space or something?
It was about space. So what did we do with space, Nathan? Do you remember something we did with space?
We used to do like the catapults and like one of the foils, and we just use.
So they made catapults, each of the classes. So we had lesson plans that the teachers all collaborated together, grades 1st through 5th. And so he's mentioning as a 5th grader the catapults. Well, our 1st graders also made catapults. So they used the same plan, and it was adjusted just a little bit based on their ability level. Thank you, Nathan. And anything else you want to share? What did you love?
Learning about the Olympics, because we used to do like contests or something to see who would win it. We had like javelins, we had
Wow.
Bradley, what did you like about Jumpstart?
So I love Jumpstart because there's a lot of stuff that you haven't learned about Jumpstart. And
Can you give us an example, Bradley? What kind of things did you learn at Jumpstart?
So I enjoyed making lava lamps, and I learned that you could put food coloring instead of just doing paint and stuff. So I'm trying to think of other things.
What did you do with your lava lamp once you made it?
You gotta so like if you want like different kind of color, you can mix two colors or just stick with one. And I did blue, and you could actually shake it and it turns into like the whole entire bottle. Like it turns like blue blackish, and when it's black, there's like multi sparkles in there.
Wow,
Some students did that.
pretty neat.
That's great.
Conley, what did you enjoy about Jumpstart?
I enjoyed making ice cream and bouncy balls and blue black and ice cream.
Tell us about the bouncy balls.
So, like, you had to mix up this glue or something, and then just let it move around, put some food coloring in it, and just like move it around while it's inside the bag, and soon it'll start getting like rubber, and then we tested them around the room once they were done, but if they break apart and they can't stick back together, just put water on them.
I know.
They stick back together.
That's cool.
You didn't know, do you still have yours at home?
I threw mine away because it flattens out and just turns into a puddle.
Kids, would you be able to tell the group what grade you're in right now? Fourth.
Third, second.
So I think they did an outstanding.
Oh,
job.
yes,
they
Board members, do you have any questions for the kids?
I have a question. I wanted to know if Nathan competed in any of the Olympic sports you did, like javelin throwing or any of that. Did you compete in anything?
Oh yeah, I've been in all.
Oh, wow, good job. I would say you're all very brave to stand up there and talk to all these adults. Good job.
That
Yes.
took a lot of
Yes.
courage. Well done.
And
Yeah.
you should be proud of yourself.
You
You
should.
Yes.
handled yourselves very well.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you want to do Jumpstart next year.
For the ice cream, right?
Yeah. Only if there's ice cream.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for the kids?
Thank you guys for sharing.
You did a great
Yeah.
job.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you all
greatly.
very much.
No, good job.
Thank you, Stacy.
Next presentation is the safety presentation by Ms. Sexton.
You can go quickly past the first slide, because let's get that out of order. Thank you for approving that tonight. I just wanted to talk a little bit about our district safety task force. So, and the makeup of that group. It's a very large group. We have law enforcement partners who meet with us once a month, and we are actually adding an ISP officer this year to the mix. And he'll be doing some work at the high school level with the staff. So we have County and now ISP all on our team. We have Northern Lakes Fire is a member on the team. New this year is Burlington Northern Railroad Partners. As we're doing tabletop safety kind of exercises with so many of our schools situated right near the railroad, we really felt like we needed somebody from the railroad who had some knowledge about
the cargo that's going through here and what kinds of responses we should be prepared for. So he will be joining us this year. We have a member of the Office of School Safety and Security, Mark Federson, is on our team. And then we have parents, which is very important. We have parents of all grade bands, and then north and south. So trying constantly looking for more because we get some and then they stop coming. And so, but their voices are really important on this team. And then we have staff. So we have administrators, operations directors, and teachers. So it's a very diverse group. And we do a lot of talking about what professional development do we roll out to our buildings to prepare and make sure that we're doing what we need to do with our emergency drills. And then I just wanted to let you know that we had several members of our district safety task force attended a training this summer at the Office of Emergency Management. And while we didn't feel like we learned a lot because we've been doing this for so long, there was a lot of affirmation for the things that we are doing in our district. They asked you, how many of you have a reunification plan? We were the only district that raised their hands. So those are nice things when you get to go and find out. We had to do a pre and a post test, and Danielle and I we only missed one on the pre-test because it was a very technical incident command question, and then we got 100% on the post test. But we were the valedictorians of the class. So anyway, it was a really good training, and it was really focused on active shooter. Unfortunately, that's where we spend a lot of our time.
How many of the members actually went to the training?
All of our armed guards, Danielle, myself, and our SROs,
Okay.
even the ones who weren't officially SROs yet.
Great.
Our teachers didn't attend, and our principals were busy, so they didn't, but it was good. And then Mark Federson was there.
Okay.
And Tyler from Northern Lakes.
Oh.
So
Very nice.
we were well represented.
Good.
So that's the end of my short little presentation tonight. We're both doing it at the same time. Any questions for me about safety? I think we're well poised because we did it tonight, and we do have one more that we need to just Spirit Lake Police Department needs to be updated for this year.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, Trustee Grissom, if you want us to make some of those changes you talked about tonight on that document moving forward with SLPD. And if so, we can maybe touch base and I can get those, your thoughts there, or we just use what we're using this year and make a change for everybody next year. Is that what
I think that would be fair. Otherwise, I feel like we'd have to go back and, in fairness, update everybody. And I don't think that's necessary. And I think really just an appendix to clarify some of the language is really all that's needed, not necessarily changing the MOU.
So I will bring that one to you and connect with Chief Sanchez. But at this point, we have an SRO split between Twin Lakes and Garwood, and SRO split between John Brown Bay, Kiefer, but he will touch base also at Mountain View. And then we have armed guards. We have SRO, Timberlake Middle, Timberlake High, and Spirit Lake Elementary, and then our 3 armed guards at Athol, Lakeland High School, and Lakeland High School. So we are approaching the point where we have the district safety task force would love to see somebody at every building so that we're not leaving them empty.
Right.
But we're making progress, and so I appreciate your support of that.
I think that's what the parents ask for, right?
Yep, it is.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for your presentation. Next, we have the financial presentation by Mr. Wallace.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Meyer.
We'll quickly go over the finance report for August of 2021. And again, the earlier monthly reports, there's a lot on the expenditure side, not to really report because we're accruing a lot of our costs back. The one thing on the revenue side, I do want to point out that that we do record in August, it comes late in July, is what they call the July payment from the state. So you can see a $12,384,000 payment. So one nice thing about the funding formula from the State Department is they do front load a good portion of what our what they call the foundation program entitlement or apportionment is at the start of the year, because a lot of costs are there and to try to get you through some of the low months as property taxes come in. So that is that payment. And it's based sort of on our budget and how many units we thought we would earn. And then of course, as the year goes on, at the very end of the year, depending on if the state changes anything, but how many units we actually earn, they sort of true up to what we actually earn, not. But it is sort of a big down payment, probably about 50% of that foundation program comes right at the start. So, you know, July, once you hit August and that payment comes in, then as far as cash flow, the low cash flow month is really June and July is when you're at the lowest, to make sure you can make like payroll obligations, and that payment really helps as we move on through this year. On the expenditure side, we do have a little bit more expenditures that were recorded, charged to this year in August, because the principals come back and they're charged, their contracts start in August, so their first month of payments come in. And so a few certified staff come in. Of course, in September is when the teachers come back, and the first full month of payroll that's charged this year really hits. We're, you know, so far since so early in the year, there's no surprises. We've actually been probably a little more aggressive in facility support, just with the amount of some of the projects this year, but that has been planned, especially with the COVID year before things were really sort of slow. So otherwise, we're looking fine in the general fund. I didn't put any unassigned fund balance right now, because right now we have property taxes coming in, so they're in the bank, but they're really going to be accrued back. And that's the work that we're working with the auditors right now. And I'll just report are in district today and tomorrow, doing their tests and their site work. They've been working earlier in the month, but they always come during this time of the year to do the final work and meet and review things with us. So that work is in progress. And again, maybe I should go. You know, you can see as we're tracking that, you know, we have a long way to get to the blue in the elementary secondary program, because that's mostly staffing and they haven't been charged yet. But you can see in administrative support that when the principals came back, suddenly there was a much larger monthly charge for the administrators than, you know, at 548 for the year to date. But we will track those costs as we go along, and expenditures by object the same. We're just getting going for the year. The other reports in there are the Memo report, and then also the Associated Student Body Count reports that were printed. Some of those didn't have a lot of activity because the admin assistants just came back, and with all enrollment, some of the data entry for the finances they're working on. On that, for the student activity accounts, Trustee Thompson had a question about the journal entries from a couple months ago, and or about a month ago in July. And so that journal entry, the one I think that grabbed people's attention, was Lakeland High School was moving some dollars from some accounts they use for revenues, gates, you know, ticket sales. Another report or account that they use is sponsors, and they took those in the revenue accounts and then dispersed those dollars to some specific activities to help pay for the cost of football and basketball and some other things like that. They often do that at the end of the year. They don't do that on a monthly basis. So that's what that journal entry was. Also, the sponsors was big that month, and that was because the high school got a new scoreboard. You might have noticed, I don't know at the football game, but Mr. Derek worked on getting a new scoreboard, and the cost of that was really paid by Spokane Teachers Credit Union, by Mart, and I think there was one other vendor, I can't remember off the top of my head. But they provided the resources, so that account had a big influence of revenues from the sponsors, so how they did that, and then help pay for that cost, that sign, also, you know, additional monies that can go to the activities. And I'm here for any questions, or if you have any more questions about that specific topic.
I have no questions.
No. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the superintendent's report.
As you know, we started the school year this week. So Dr. Pasley and Ms. Sexton started at one end and I started at the other end, and we visit every single classroom. So we did it, this is my 6th year in the district, and every single year I have visited every single room. A few times I've had teachers out at prep, or they've been at recent with them, but I'd say I get the majority of them and make a connection with all teachers. I just want to point out, these are just some of the pictures from the first day to get this uploaded on Tuesday. But this one, Chrissy's like, are you sure you want to put the picture of that sink in there? I do want the patrons to know, and that's at Athol Elementary. That was on the very first levy that we were going to replace those 42-year-old acorn sinks that they barely would work, and they've been in there for at least 42 years. They were at Lakeland Junior High School, Athol Elementary, and Spirit Lake, and they were finally, we had roof emergencies, so that was put on hold. That was in the accountability report to the patrons that we couldn't follow through with that thing that we promised on that task that we had promised on the levy. But we did finally, were able to follow through this summer, and all 3 of those schools now have these new sinks. So thank you to the facilities department and to the patrons for supporting that for our students. So happiness all around. We had a lot of very positive feedback from our staff to be back in school and the students to be back in school in person. So this is the draft operational plan. This is the subcommittee that I met with. As I updated the board, we have 20 now families, parents that are representing the different schools throughout the district. And we met, we're getting information and feedback. Their job is to get feedback from their schools to bring to the board. But what I am requesting from the board tonight is if we don't want to give final approval for the operational plan, to go down to the state, because I know there was some questions and concerns about that. Would request that the board approve the operational plan for the district. There's a flow chart. It has a guidance system in here, and the school nurses and parents are really requesting that we have something concrete for families to look at. So the one here, they don't particularly, there's things that they like about it and there's things they don't like about it. So what the parent group is requesting, and we had voting today online, what the parents would like to request at this time is when the board does approve this, it can be used as a guideline and a reference for families, but that they would like to get together similar to the surrounding district, take this flow chart, and they would like to get feedback from their parents before they bring the recommendation to the school board to finalize our own district flow chart at the September 23rd board meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. So the school nurses would really like to be able to have a reference and a guideline to show parents. as of right now, what we have in our draft, what the board has approved is the green level of operation, which I'm gonna show you and just show the public. What we have that's been approved by the board is if you have tested positive or have been confirmed to have COVID-19 or a contagious disease, do not attend school. Students will have access to their educational program online and will be responsible for the assigned coursework. And then please notify us of your positive test and talk to your medical practitioner on what guidelines they would like you to follow. So we have that system set up right now. That's what we're currently telling folks, families, when they have a confirmed case. The same as for staff. So same thing, speak to your medical practitioner. The parents would like to have a flow chart that they can send home to families and have it available on the refrigerator. They feel like that would be an important thing to have, but there is not 100% consensus. I had 12 yeses and 4 nos from parents today when we talked about the flow chart, but there was some concern here with no symptoms, a negative test, and still not attending. They don't feel like that is, they really don't feel like our district should be following that. There was some major concern with the parent group on that first column there. So they would like for the board to only approve this, and this is their recommendation, which is what my task was, to go back and work with the parents, get their recommendations and bring them to you. They would like this to just be approved tonight as a guideline and reference, but that this is not, we're not following all of this. It's a reference and a guideline by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. Then what they'd like to do is meet next week, get feedback from their parents at their schools, bring that back to the group, and the group would like to meet. A surrounding district has done their own. They took masks off, the surrounding district took masks off their flow chart, and they created their own flow chart from their group, and that's what this group would like to do. So it's at the pleasure of the board, but that's what the recommendation from the parent group is. So that being said, the changes that they made when we met, I've highlighted in that lovely color that you are used to from last year. They would really like individual lockers to be available on a case-by-case basis as requested by parents. There are some items where they feel like there's a lot of textbooks, or there's athletic equipment or band equipment, things that they would like to be able to on a case-by-case basis for them to meet with principals and be assigned lockers if available. And then down here at the very bottom, they've approved, from the parents' perspective, approved everything else. The only thing else was this flow chart that I just showed you. And then this is the green, yellow, and red. What are the differences in having this? They made a few changes to here, and so that's, they feel like it's easy for parents to see the difference between the different levels of operation.
So what's keeping us from offering lockers to everybody? Why does it have to be on a case-by-case basis?
That's just what the admin teams did after last year. They wanted to continue with that at all the secondary schools. So.
Okay. And then on the flow chart, what would be the motivation for approving it with a caveat rather than just tabling it until they have the flow chart that they're wanting?
Well, in the discussion today, I feel like the discussion centered around school nurses having something to refer parents to, which the school nurses could certainly refer parents to this flow chart and just say our board hasn't approved it yet, but this has been released by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. And if the board feels more comfortable with that, that certainly, there were a few people, 4 parents that felt like on the subcommittee that felt like this flow chart was perfect the way it was. Or at least they voted to adopt it because they feel like we need a flow chart. 12 of them, 4 of them said, I don't feel like we should approve the flow chart and then have a caveat saying, well, we still need to fix it. So there was mixed opinions about it, but nothing is perfect right now.
Oh, sure.
Even the flow charts that people have, the old have several things that I think would work in our district. So it's really whatever the board's desire is, whether we move forward with this can be used as a reference and a guide, but we haven't adopted it, or whether the board would like to wait and have the parents get feedback from other parents at their schools and then have a work group for them to bring back our own flow chart. It's either way is fine. I think the school nurses are really wanting to have somewhere to refer families to have more concrete days, such as this has.
Something that I meant to ask a while back and keep forgetting. On the district-wide practices, it states that we explicitly teach hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, etc. What does that mean?
So hand hygiene is good. She's specifically asking about here. Hand hygiene is the washing your hands before you go somewhere, washing your hands when you're in the bath. We typically do that with younger kids anyways, but this is like explicitly saying we're going to teach very good hand washing. So hand hygiene is what that is. And respiratory etiquette is sneezing into your ear, not letting your sneeze go anywhere. But
Okay, so I mean, I guess I do understand what hand hygiene is and what respiratory etiquette is, but I guess the phrase explicitly teach, what does that mean? I mean, is this like a daily practice? Are the teachers every day going into the bathroom with the children, teaching them? What does that mean?
explicitly means just that we are making sure in the beginning of the year that we're explicitly saying we want to all stay as clean as possible. We want to make sure everyone's germs are contained. This is how you wash them. You would typically do that in the beginning of the year with the younger kids. We typically don't do that probably with middle level in the beginning of the year, but we are explicitly doing that with all grade levels and talking about that. And then coming back with the younger grades, cycling back and scaffolding so that we teach that and remind them again.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Well, I'm happy to clarify.
No, it's fine.
If you...
It's fine. Okay, so I don't have any other questions on this. Do any of the board members have any questions?
No, ma'am. I do. Not necessarily on the plan itself, but this operational plan subcommittee, is this the committee that you said was a subcommittee of the board?
Yeah, parent subcommittee.
Okay, how were these people chosen and who are they?
Well, I brought it to the board, the last board meeting.
Right.
And I showed you the names of the people and showed you the representation from what.
Oh, you did? I don't remember that. I remember you bringing it up and I saw it on the EduBlog thing.
No, I brought it to the board at the last board meeting and I asked for your permission to create it. And then I asked for your permission for which parents had applied to be in there. And I said, I can cut it down if you feel like this is too much. I showed you the names, what schools they were at.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. I was just thinking that was coming to, I guess that was your presentation to us then, that these were the people you were picking. Okay.
Yeah. And then I told you what my next step is to meet with them and have them go through this.
Right.
And then I made clear to them at the meeting, there were several people on Zoom or Google, and then there were several people here.
Yeah.
And there was differing viewpoints, but we worked through it. We all talked through it. I said, you are a representation of your school and your parents at your school. You're a subcommittee of the board, so it's similar to you as board members, constituents of your zones, is you're listening to all your constituents and then bringing back, this is how my constituents feel. That's what their job is as parents, and they are reminding each other, we're not just using our personal opinion, we're gathering feedback from our parents at our school, and then we're supposed to be giving a feedback to the board of trustees on this is how the parents are feeling.
Yeah.
So that you have a parent, a great number of diverse parent input.
So will, if this plan goes forward, if this is the way the district's going this year, will we not survey all the parents and staff like we did last year? This takes place of that, or?
Are you specifically talking about the operational plan, or are you talking about the parent survey that I do every October?
No, all last year, remember we sent out and we asked about masking, we asked about all the different things that happened with COVID, right? We kept getting all the feedback from everyone involved. So will we do that still, or is this the feedback the board will receive?
It's board. Okay. You can decide, we also want to do a full survey. You can ask these people to do a survey at their schools. So it's smaller group, like I'm one parent at Garwood, and I'm asking, well, there's several parents at Garwood, but our Garwood people maybe even hold a face-to-face, so people feel more apt to talk. It wouldn't be an anonymous survey, they could actually give their opinion. It's really up to the pleasure of the board. If you'd like to have more surveys, I can certainly send something out, or add a question in the October survey about the operational plan. And then we need to, every 6 months, have the group at the minimum come together and review the plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
So back to this. I don't know why. On this, I just want to remind the board, tonight on the action item, I am asking that you do approve the operational plan. There is students with disabilities and IEPs that are waiting contingent on a plan, because we do have IDLPs, which are the learning plans for technology when we have distance learning. Those are waiting on this for IEPs. We have parents that would like to have a plan in place, and we've had staff, and then of course the school nurses. So I would like to be able to, the board to approve this tonight. We are required to send down to the State Department on October 5th, by October 5th or 5th, the next board meeting in 2 weeks. I also did receive, I did check, Trustee Grissom did ask for me to watch a video on the Anderson, Julian, and Cole that did a presentation on the plan. And so I did ask the attorney that I asked them, I need some feedback to make sure, because I want to make sure that our district is not signed up for something that the board doesn't want to sign up for. The attorney wrote back, I did the presentation and discussed the ARP ESSER requirements. I did explain that the district is required to have a back to in-person school plan, and that the plan must discuss the current CDC recommendations. The plan is required. Compliance with CDC recommendations is not required, but need to be addressed or discussed in your plan. So the board is allowed to say, we talked about masks are optional and they're available, extras are available in the office. That is the check mark that we need to do for CDC, saying that yes, we did address their recommendations for masks. In other words, have a reasoned plan to keep students and staff safe, taking into account current CDC recommendations. Moreover, we have heard that the SDE is not strictly scrutinizing the plans. Thus, as long as there is a well-reasoned plan posted on the website, the district is in compliance with ARP ESSER 3 requirements. So I just want to make sure that makes me feel better that we do not have to require masks or the vaccines or anything that is recommended by the CDC. So I wanted to address that because there was a question about that.
Can you explain why students with IEPs and whatnot, they're not in effect until this is approved?
They're in effect, but they still have an IDLP, which from last year when we were in COVID and we had distance online learning, every single IEP we had in the district had to have an additional document that was signed by the IEP team, which includes the parents, case manager, the teachers, at least one gen ed teacher, admin, and those are still in effect. Once the plan goes through, then they're able to release those, and that's just what Ms. Badger told me today. I'm not sure of all the specifics. She's at a volleyball game right now, but I can certainly follow through with that. But that's one thing that she told us today.
I'm just trying, okay, because it's my understanding that this operational plan is specific only to ARP and ESSER $3. But now you're telling me that there's also something else contingent on it?
No, and I've clarified this. I wanted to make sure and clarify with the board. I have clarified this at the last 3 meetings because this is not only in compliance for ARP and ESSER $3. Yes, it is required to have it. And yes, we are required to have meaningful stakeholder input into it. And we have to come back to it and review it with the group every 6 months at a minimum. But I did address with the board, it's not only just for ARP and ESSER 3. Families are really wanting to have something in hand. They want to know what our protocol is in this district. I even got a reach out from, and I'm not even sure if it was in the paper or not, but I did have a press reporter reach out and say, we heard there was no plan in the Lakeland Joint School District, and I said, that's absolutely not true. The board has approved the green level of operation, and I gave them the copy of this is what's in the green level, and this is if we have a confirmed case, which are the pieces I just showed you tonight, and I resent it out to the press, and I resent it out to every principal saying, making sure this is what the board has currently approved. But if the board would approve the plan tonight, then we have the yellow's been approved, the red's approved, and any other resources at the bottom along with that green, yellow, red would be approved by the board. Sharing that with families that the board has approved the plan. So it's not just for ARP and ESSER $3. It really is just so the patrons, parents, staff have a guide for us to go through. Otherwise, we are still living under last year's plan.
So when you say living under last year's plan, if that was a plan only for 1 year, then how are we still living under it? I'm just trying to understand this, that's all.
No, I
Okay.
agree. That would be the only guidance that I'd be able to give families based on last year's plan, which is outdated.
Right.
So we rewrote the plan, not only to fulfill the ARP and ESSER 3 requirement, but even more importantly, the school nurses wanted a plan, staff wants to have a plan, all the parents, got lots of parents input. What level are we starting and what does green mean? That people like to have something concrete to look at and really to refer back to. And I think for the parents, this is an important document for them. And I don't feel comfortable making the decisions without the board's approval for that.
Okay. That still doesn't clear up why we are holding up, or how, maybe holding up's the wrong word, but we have to approve this for IEPs.
I didn't get enough, Dr. Pasley, could you help me, because I don't have enough information.
My understanding is last year when, 1920 when we shut down, the state mandated that all IEPs that we had to have a plan because we're still obligated under FAPE to provide a free and appropriate education. So we had to delineate, okay, this is what in-person would look like, this is what a remote looked like. If we went to a hybrid model, that's what that would look like. That mandate is still in effect. All IEPs expire after an annual, so 366 days if they're done. So she is still obligated to provide that if, kids are sick for a long period of time, uniquely to an IEP child or a student with a disability. If they're out for 14 days, we still need to address what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for Ms. Badger, it's what's our plan for that, and we don't want to step outside of the scope of what the board approves, but we still have to have plans for all of our students, and I would imagine that will be in effect for the remainder of this year, so that we're in alignment with what our policies are.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Kind of.
So it will be, when you say, never mind.
As
Okay.
COVID is still, I mean, until
It's still
we're
in,
done,
yes.
we will have to address for any of our students with disability that are on an IEP, we will have to address some type of learning plan that encompasses all those provisions. So if they're home for a long period of time,
Mhm.
if it's just 3 or 4 days, I mean, we're still obligated to provide FAVE. And then the question is, are we providing homebound services? Like, what does that look like? We have to have a plan for that.
Okay.
To ensure that we're providing FAVE.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so the FR, I mean, I get it, but the ART ESSER plan becomes all encompassing for the student with disabilities, IEP requirement to also give the parents, patrons, whomever of the district something to look at. Unfortunately, its name is the ART ESSER plan.
Right.
But it becomes
It's
used
really
for
a
all
guidance
things,
dog
right?
that we're hoping to provide for families. We are just obligated to provide it specifically for students with disabilities. So we know we're still on if there's a remote situation, and you know, those will be individualized per child.
Okay.
So instead of the district having a COVID plan like we had, we now have this ART ESSER plan. Instead of creating something for the patrons, something that would, you know, a single plan like we did last time that would fulfill these needs, the ART ESSER plan is being used to fulfill all those needs.
No, that's actually not accurate. This is we didn't call it what they wanted us to call it. They wanted us to call it a safe return to in-person instruction, continuity of services. That's what they wanted us to call the plan. And that was the piece. We called it the 2021-22 Lakeland Joint School District Operational Plan. So we are using it as an operational plan. And then at such time, if the board agrees to send it, which would be the next board meeting, if the board agrees to send it to the state with that checklist, then Chair Thompson and I would sign it. That is a different decision. This, I am just asking for us to use it as an operational plan. I am not going to send it into the state, and Board Chair Thompson would have to sign it, which I know from past experience, she will not sign it unless the entire board votes on it. So the public does not need to be concerned that we will be signing that up for that without the board making a decision and her signing that. I'm just asking for you to approve the plan tonight, so we have that for families. I think it's important, and it's only been 2 days of school, but that has been the most amount of questions that I have been asked.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure to give approval.
Except that the title of the document is a safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan is a condition of receiving ARP ESSER funds from the U.S. Department of Education. So does that stay? And then the other thing is, I went back and again,
and you could vote to take that out.
Yeah.
And just so people know what she's referring to, if you don't mind, what she's talking about is this statement right here that is in. She's returned, so that can certainly come out until the board votes on whether to accept that plan or not to send down to the state.
Yeah, because back to the attorneys, you know, just like we went through last year, like you were saying, you're being told one at the governor level, we're being told another thing. I pulled up his checklist and I pulled up the attorney, his PowerPoint, and it explicitly says that the board must include these things as far as the CDC recommendations, and we have to address how the policies we've adopted on any and each of the CDC recommendations, and he goes through the whole list. And there's more, so that's my concern. I have no concern with a plan for safety and to ease the minds of the people in the district so they can look at it. I mean, I'm good with that. I just am concerned about the ART ESSER thing.
Yeah, and I think my suggestion is we go to another attorney, the district's attorney maybe, and ask for a second opinion about the piece that you and I are talking about. But tonight, I guess what I'm asking the board to is approve, and you can certainly take out this sentence and make any other changes you'd like, but I would like to approve a plan that I can send out to families saying that the board has approved this operational plan, and that their parents are gonna be getting input from parents on the flow chart. That would be my request. The other thing, Board Chair Thompson, that I wanna make sure and double clarify, I think what I heard last meeting was we are not going to be required to track COVID cases in the district this year. From the board's perspective, I just wanna double verify that that is accurate. One surrounding district is collecting that, and putting that on their website, and others are not. So I just wanna make sure to know what the board wants to do because as of right now, we are not tracking the COVID cases.
Does anybody have input on that?
Have you received any parent input on that?
Nope.
That would not be something I think would be worthy of anybody's time, but if a parent thinks so, then, if enough parents believe that.
So maybe ask the
It would be.
subcommittee to ask about that.
Sure.
Along with okay, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that is good.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right, any other things on this that you need more questions from me before we go to the action items?
Free to come on in. You're welcome.
Okay, and the very last thing here, no, two things. You saw Leon was here earlier, just reminding the board that he would be happy to come talk about the Rafter Area Comprehensive Plan. If you would like him to present, he's happy to present to the Board of Trustees. That was a discussion item. Thank you for the follow-up of the contagious disease. The patrons will see the revision of that is on today's agenda. So thank you for following up for that. Much easier to follow for our folks in the schools. And then as Trustee Bain pointed out earlier in announcements, we are going to be reviewing the first 3-day enrollment. I have requested a special meeting with the board to request an emergency levy. And our 3-day enrollment for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you do an average daily attendance for the 3 days, and that's how the emergency levy is requested. So we will be bringing the documentation to you. We'll go out to you today. Our 3-day enrollment is 4,718. Last year, the 3-day was 4,341, and that included LOA online. So we're up 377 students, which is an elementary school worth of students. That does include staffing needs we have to address that, and things that I'll be presenting to you and the team tomorrow. But we did have an enrollment, quite a bit of enrollment increase, and we do have a public board meeting tomorrow at 2, where I will be requesting staffing and curriculum materials for the new students, Chromebooks for the new students that have come in. And that will be at tomorrow's meeting.
Can I have a re-clarification on our funding? Because when I was trying to figure a few things out, I went back and read past minutes, and it stated that we were going to be funded on enrollment. But then I believe the reason for going to an emergency levy is because now we're not being funded on enrollment or being funded on average daily attendance.
Yes, that's currently back in statute is the 88. We're funded on average daily attendance.
Okay.
But that's not the reason we're requesting the emergency levy. The emergency levy is because the budget is based on the projected enrollments that we had from last year. We have gone up 377 students to go in line with what the board's new policy is on, what your desirable class sizes are, and also what we promised the patrons in the instructional levy. We would like to maintain reasonable class sizes in this district. We have, which I was going to present tomorrow, but we have some class sizes, first grade, that are at 29. We cannot have first grade in teaching reading with class sizes with 29. Our budget does not have the ability to add in extra staffing right now because it's not built on having 4,718 students. So what districts have an emergency levy for is to present to the board, this is the amount of new students we have, thus we have to pay, we'd like to have, these are our bubbles, we're requesting these many teachers, we're requesting this much parapros to help out, we're requesting this many Chromebooks, and we need this much more teacher materials, and we bring it to the board, and then the board gets to decide None, partial or full, based on what we're eligible for, and we'll present all that information to you tomorrow for the board to make a decision.
How many I just have a question, how many out-of-district applications were submitted this year?
Chrissy would know, but probably hundreds, I don't know.
I would say,
Close to
many-
200.
do we know how many we approved and how many we did not?
New ones, 0.
Okay, can I see a report of that, please? That would be fantastic.
We have grandfathered in the people that have been here before,
Okay.
but we have not taken any with the COVID. The board prior, I told them we're not gonna have any out of district come in to our district. We had several people trying to come, because as you know, we were in school 5 days a week and we did not have a mask requirement. So there were several people wanting to come in, and at that point we had to try to maintain social distancing, so we didn't take any new students in. But there are people that are grandfathered in that have been coming for years. And there is a caveat, if there is an extenuating circumstance, there may be an extenuating circumstance if there was one that we might approve. So I would let you know if that was on the list. Okay, any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a problem? Oh, you just took it off the thing. Got it. Okay. Moving on to action items. The first action item is the LJSD 2021-2022 operational plan. Would we like to have further discussion on that? Before it's approved?
I think if the board's going to approve the plan, I understand the need for the plan, and obviously there needs to be something approved for these student population that Dr. Pasley was sharing on. I am not comfortable with the our ESSER language that's in the plan. If you read the Federal Register release and the recommendations or the requirements, they're not even recommendations of what needs to be in the plan. Even if we removed the title, the board's free to vote however they want to vote. But going back to my original concern, even tonight, the president in his address made the statement that and this isn't the only reason, but it just goes along with my concern the whole time, is that now he has extended his COVID vaccination requirements, and it has nothing to do with vaccination. I don't care what requirement mandate he extends to all of those who work in a particular field. But his reasoning for extending, and he said his federal authority comes because all of those industries are receiving Medicare and Medicaid. So in other words, what he said is because you have federal funding, you must be vaccinated or lose your job. I am not willing to vote for language or something that maybe it won't, that may, you know, we all sat in the same skill builders I did, that may require our patrons at some point or our students to become vaccinated, because after all, we also would be receiving this federal funding. And as time goes on, the requirement for the federal government for anybody under their umbrella continues to grow to where he's even pressed it now to private sector. So I want to give Dr. Pasley what she needs, what the students need, and I want to give the parents what they need. So I think we need to fix the plan. That's what the board chooses to do, or you may vote, you know, however you want to vote, and I'll cast my vote and we'll call it good and move forward. but that's my concern.
I have similar concerns as well. I worry that if we're worried about enrollment, wait to see what happens with enrollment if a mandatory vaccine comes in. I really think it would be not a good thing. And I don't believe that that's right. If someone wants to get vaccinated, that's up to them, but forcing that on somebody isn't right. And if we're entering into an agreement in which would put us in a position where that's going to happen to our students, it's very concerning, and it would be negligent of me to not at least consider that and make sure that I can do what I can do to address that. And I do agree that we definitely need to take the precautions that we need to meet the needs of the parents and the wishes of the parents and the needs of the special ed department, whatever needs to happen there. But I would have to say I'm in agreement with you, Trustee Grissom.
I just feel like the district fought so hard last year to do the best possible thing we could do for our students. I want to make sure, and our staff, and we listened to what they said, and we did the surveys, and we tried to split the line. I don't want to start off on the wrong foot. So I think if we remove, unless somebody else has input, I think if we remove the name off the statement, off the top of it, and it might be for the sake of having to reinvent the wheel, if we go down this road for Dr. Meyer having to do all the work again, that maybe we just make a copy of this and revise it or what have you, because I think it's sort of, I think we need, if it's a plan for the district and for, well, I guess maybe we need to ask Dr. Pasley, do you have to have the statement about the staff's social, emotional, mental health and other needs, or the social, emotional, mental health and safety and nutrition for the students?
That's only for the checklist, the safe return, so we could take that part out if the board wants.
Okay, so my recommendation would be is that we, obviously it's much more simplified, thank goodness, than last year's plan was, but maybe we remove all that bulk and get down to the basics and say, here's what red is, here's what green, yellow is. We're going to teach them wash your hands, blow your nose, all those kinds of things. And remove all of the social, emotional, health, safety, child nutrition.
This part starting right here, Trustee Grissom, where there's a space between last year, we stopped underneath extracurricular.
Okay.
The things we addressed to that safe return to school continuity deal starts right here with this academics and activities, social, emotional, mental health, other needs, process and timeline, and it could stop right here.
Okay.
And that would be the part that was on that safe to return to in-person checklist.
Okay.
And that would be just what our plan was last year, narrowed down, like you're saying, without anything from that checklist.
Okay,
and then I also heard you say this initial statement right here.
Yes, that would be my recommendation to the board, to remove all of that language, just give what we need to give for the patrons to feel comfortable and the students, and so parents know what we're operating under. So Dr. Pasley and her team can move forward with this demographic of students that are relying on this plan. I would be fine with that. I think I see. And I assume, like our plan last year, as time goes on, or if something changed or whatever, we would just come in and update this plan.
And I would bring parent input to the next board meeting and maybe have some of them come to present.
With respect to the flow chart, Is there any reason we can't create our own flow chart to meet the needs of what people are wanting just by incorporating what has already been implemented on this, where it's, you know, responding to a confirmed case of contagious disease, and just create the flow chart based off of all of that
That's
right
exactly what the Coeur d'Alene School District did, and I think the parent committee is definitely willing to do that.
Okay.
They just kind of came to that conclusion today when I said there are some concerns about these pieces. They would like to come back together to address that and make recommendations to you at the next board meeting.
Okay, because I mean, I can respect that people want the flow chart, but I think if we're already giving them the guidance, use that guidance to create the flow chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Any further discussion?
I don't have a problem with reviewing that so that we can get the plan out so that the parents know where our levels are. I think that's the focus, is where our levels are. Again, you know, the flow chart thing, it's already been recommended by the committee. It's not in line with
Right.
the way we want it to be, so
Right.
I don't have a problem at all, you know,
Okay.
omitting those things.
All right, does there need to be any further discussion?
No,
No.
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
With those changes, I'm all
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Then I'll entertain a motion for the LJSD 2021-2022 operational plan.
I'll move to approve the 2021-22 LJSD 272 operational plans with the changes discussed, omitting all those references to the ARP ESSER continuity plan. That's fine.
Okay,
I second that motion.
hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Trustee Chairman, let me make sure I understand. I understood everything that you said to take out. And then is the flow chart in there just as guidance, but we're not gonna use that as our flow chart until the parents come back to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just gonna double check. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no flow chart was approved.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, moving on to the district boundary revision resolution. We can open that for comments. I did have some corrections when it was brought before and they're still not there. And I do have some questions. Because you had emailed me prior to it coming up onto the agenda. But first of all, we're not Lakeland School District. It needs to say joint. And so, and I have discussed that with our council before, but it doesn't seem to get changed. Also in this, the alternation to legal boundary for Coeur d'Alene School District and Lakeland School District, she talks about there being two written comments. I've never seen them. I saw one, but I haven't seen the second one.
We've only seen one.
What's that?
We've only seen one, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if that's clerical error or if there is a second one and we've never been provided with it. And then a couple of the, there was an exhibit 4 for the minutes of the joint workshop. I didn't see those. And then they weren't attached to the board book. So and then the exhibit 7 and 8, the altered boundaries, those weren't on there either. So until we have all the exhibits, personally, I'd like to table this. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, or if they have conversation or discussion matters about this.
Are you making a motion, Madam Chair?
No, I'm saying that's what I would like to do. I haven't asked for a motion yet. I didn't know if we were finished with discussion or not. Rob, do you have any input?
Well, it certainly needs to be cleaned up. I get the joint school district. I mean, the details need to be cleaned up. My opinion that is, the details are what are hanging you up versus the.
Well, there's exhibits that are claimed to be attached that I haven't been provided with to
And
look
she
at
didn't
it.
send them to him?
So that bothers me. I mean, I'd like to see what they are. I mean, given the fact that they're saying exhibit 5 is 2 written comments. There was no exhibit 5 and there was 1 comment that was attached. So I don't want to, I just would like to see what
That's
they are.
number 5, right here, public comment received.
Mhm.
That's for exhibit
That's
number
one.
5.
One of those.
But that's one,
Yeah, and
that's
that's all
not
she gave
2.
us, so I assume that it's a clerical error, but we could certainly call and ask her about that.
Okay.
But there's no other, that's exhibit 5, it's just the one. And there is no exhibit 7 and 8. She has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's it. So I'm not sure if she.
For 7 and 8, I'm just thinking out loud what they provided maybe at the public meeting earlier. But at the joint meeting, I don't know.
I don't think so because it's the alteration of the boundary lines,
Yeah.
which we didn't know at that time. Oopsies, come back. There we go. Okay, so. All right, then if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion on the district boundary revision resolution.
I'll make a motion to table the district boundary revision resolution until we can get the proper documentation.
Second that.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
To curriculum.
Secondary supplemental resources for board consideration. These appear to be all books and a supplemental science curriculum for Timberlake Middle School. Does anyone have any input, comments, questions?
Nope. I looked at each one and I don't have any questions.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion regarding the curriculum.
I'll make a motion to approve the secondary supplemental resources for board consideration for Timberlake Middle School.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next action item is appointment of the clerk of the Board of Trustees. I thought there was well, I'll entertain a motion regarding the appointment of the clerk of the Board of Trustees. Unless we want to have discussion. Nope, okay. All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we appoint the clerk of the Board of Trustees.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next, we have the appointment of the District Custodian of Public Records, which,
Should we be naming this person?
yeah,
Well,
I thought there were documents that
yeah.
needed to be signed.
Will there not be no swearing in, no nothing, or just
Right.
an appointment and that's it? We just move on?
Yeah. We never swore.
Yeah, you don't swear in, usually the clerk, because they
You
were
swear in the
appointed,
trustees.
they're part of the January thing
Right.
where they just appoint. treasurer.
Reorganization.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then I will I will amend my motion to appointment of the clerk of the board, Janelle Vasquez. And I will make a motion that we appoint a district custodian of public records, also clerk of the board, Janelle Vasquez.
I second both of those motions.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Now we have to appoint an acting clerk of the Board of Trustees in the absence of the clerk of the board. Do we have any recommendations on this?
I would guess that Chrissy would be the fill-in if she's gone, but I don't know.
We could switch it up and put Brooke in there.
We could find somebody, yeah.
Okay, I won't speak anymore.
Or we could just say, you're never allowed not to come. Like all those no's, all those negatives.
I agree with Rob. His recommendation.
All right, so then I will entertain a motion regarding the appointment of acting clerk of the Board of Trustees in the absence of the clerk of the board.
I will move to appoint Chrissy Williams as acting clerk of the Board of Trustees in the absence of the clerk of the board.
I second the motion.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, moving on to HR items. I asked for the HR to be removed from the consent agenda, so Brooke wouldn't have to keep running back and forth.
I'm coming. Make them hungry here. So I did have a good conversation. Well, first of all, Board Chair Thompson, trustees. I did have a good conversation with Board Chair Thompson, just the format and how you guys would like things presented. So I hope this works out for you guys. But if you have any questions as we go down, we'll first start with the HR memo, like I normally present.
What's SLP stand for?
That's speech
Speech
language
language.
Thank you.
pathologist.
Okay, okay. All right, I have no questions on the HR memo. Does anybody?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion on the HR memo.
I'll move that we approve the HR memo as presented.
And in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to administrator contracts.
I have a memo in there that explains each one of those positions, administrator positions. You'll see some letters of intent for the federal programs, the Betty Kiefer principal, and Lakeland High School activities director.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of these?
No, thank you for providing them.
Sure. Is that the format you guys would like for future administrative positions?
I don't want to speak for everyone. If it was nice to me.
Yes.
Yes, I appreciate the work also, Brooke, in looking back at prior years. This is similar to what was presented to the board, and it's just nice to have a little bit of background to know who we're saying yes to, right?
It is. That's appreciated.
Although I understand, these, like the federal programs director position and the principal, it's basically the same people and all those things. I noticed that the AD, there was some monetary value applied to his description, but there weren't for the other two, although I know what those are. Was there a reason that you didn't do that, or I'm just curious, that's all?
What are you like?
So I'm looking at the memo
Uh-huh.
that you provided.
Yep.
So under Mr. Knapp's, you provided like a step one and some other, monetary information as far as the pay, but you did not provide that under 1 and 2. I'm just curious. I mean, we all know what
So
it is.
we
It's just
did-
a flip.
We had the 5 extra days of training, which is on all 3 of them.
Yeah.
And then the 7 I've explained that in my memo.
Mhm.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I just wondered, in the memo, you were a little bit more detailed in his, so we didn't list the federal programs director's salary. And we didn't list
In the memo? Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't list
Or in the letter of intent?
in
the
the memo
Oh,
for admin
okay.
hires.
Yeah, because I had put those in the letter of intent.
Okay.
I thought those were sufficient.
Okay, all
Because
right,
and I broke it down of what the prorated amounts were and everything.
okay.
Like Matt didn't have any prorations or
Yeah.
anything like that, so this was pretty straightforward.
Well, it looks like on the letter of intent is also the same that was on the memo that you provided to us. I think it was just because the first 2 were short and sweet, and then there's Matt's, but I was provided. So thank you.
Yeah, you did a good job, thank you, I appreciate it.
Does anyone have any conversation, discussion on the administrator contracts that were presented?
Do you know?
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion on the administrator contracts.
I'll move that we approve the administrator contracts as presented.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the administrator salary matrix.
So we had a couple of adjustments here. We had to actually place that federal programs director properly, and I believe Board Chair Thompson, you had conversation with administration regarding this.
Mhm.
And then the activities director, we put them out in their own column because, as I stated in my HR memo, they actually work 220, and instead of doing 7 days each year, it just made more sense just to constantly place them in that area.
I agree.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
All right, is there any further discussion or comments or questions on the salary matrix? Administrator salary matrix.
Well, it raised a question, not necessarily the matrix, but based upon having to create a division of contracts between admins and principals for the last issue we dealt with. I was wondering if this, even though it's a matrix and they're in the same line, the assistant soup and the federal programs director, do we have 2 different contracts that are being used for them? So we don't end up with the prior instance where we had admin under a or under a principal contract and all those.
So the administrator contracts is a standard template from the state. And so the only thing that's different in there is the title.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah. That was my only, when I read that, I thought, oh, I hope we separated another checkbox went off in my head that we make sure we separate those. I have, it looks great. Thank you, Brooke, for all your work. I have no questions.
Okay, if there's no further discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion on the administrator salary matrix.
Move to approve the administrator salary matrix as presented.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the alternate authorizations.
Once again, there's a detailed memo in there. So for individuals, they're all hard to fill positions. And so I'm hoping they'll move forward with that.
Again, this is really good information.
Yes.
Presented. It's really easy to follow and see who's in this alternate authorization.
I know this week was extremely stressful, so thank you for preparing this.
You're welcome.
Any questions, comments, or discussion?
No, it's very spelled out very well.
Yeah, I have none.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you.
Then I'll entertain a motion on the alternate authorizations.
I'll move to approve the alternate authorizations as presented.
I'll second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to the high school assistant principal job description.
You had mentioned basically the playground.
Yeah.
So I just changed that to the common area.
Yeah, that's nice.
One thing that I would like, if you can add going forward, is when these come before the board for approval or revisions or whatever, if we can just have the dates on there like we do on our policies when they were adopted and when they were revised, so that the boards to come can actually see when we took a look at it and did whatever we needed to do.
Absolutely. I usually put that in my title on the website. I started doing that, but
Okay.
I can most certainly put it within the document as well.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions or comments on the job description for the high school assistant principal?
I have none.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion on the job description.
I'll make a motion to approve the job description for the high school assistant principal job description.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Am I excused?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Brooke. Okay, moving on to board policy. These were all brought before. It should be noted that, okay, here we are. The form for requesting to address the board had policy committee reviewed it and made some minor revisions to it. And so that should be noted.
And Chairman Thompson, I did want to tell you guys that after we had attached and went back through, there are a couple that still have a strike through in there.
I saw
so
that.
I'll make sure those are taken out. If there's
Okay,
any.
yeah, I was going to mention that. So thank you. I'm glad you saw that. And I do believe, let me pull up. I don't recall which one it was. I think it's on the form. We made, we tried to, I'm not speaking very well. Where was it? There was concern because there was no way within the document to, because I don't have a problem with letting someone speak for 3 minutes regarding something that's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
However, it does, it can create a woo out there, chasing a squirrel, which I do. So we did put a caveat in here that says, if you want to speak to the board and it's not on the agenda, to complete the form so that the clerk can give it to the chair and they can work it into the agenda so that patrons have the opportunity to actually speak on things of the agenda, and they're actually, letting us know what concerns they have, what they want to talk about, or what they'd like to see us address. So we did add language in there for that. And it's actually number 6 on page 2 of, on page 2 of 5105F. And then We did revise the notice on 5105F.
41.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
No, 4105F. There was some concern that we're trying to silence the public, which is absolutely not what we're trying to do. And we're just trying to maintain order and decorum in our meeting. So the statutes and everything that govern our policies are all listed on the policy. And so we went ahead and on the form, we went ahead and cited the statutes that are listed on the policy. So that reference is there for the public to review and to see and understand. So those were just some minor changes that we, the policy committee did on 4105 and 4105F. But other than that, no other changes were made.
So this policy has been the same pretty much through all boards and nothing has,
No,
this is brand new
absolutely
to
not.
us? Okay,
This is a complete, and I just noticed, Madam Chair, that those citations on the form of actual statute, other than the two at the top, are not at the bottom. No, these are complete rework, and this makes much more, gives the public much more access to the board, to address the board, to say, hey, I want this on an agenda, to, starting last year, we started going through all of the policies that had to do with community participation in the district and trying to make it more open and more communication.
Yeah.
Whether it was with the board or with somebody at the school or, within reason, obviously with their statute and there's a chain of command and all those, but no, these are not. These are, the other ones were pretty much like you see across most government entities.
so I know I, as a board member, really like input from people and I encourage it. I want to know what people think. I cannot go solicit it from you. I learned that the hard way. But that is something that I am very interested in, and I wouldn't want to approve a document that would keep somebody from being able to do that. And I think it's really important that people need to understand that that's not the intent of this document. The intent of this document is to actually give you a voice, and that I would personally not be approving something if it was trying to stifle someone's voice or make it so somebody could not express their opinion, because that's very important. And I welcome that personally. Can't speak for everyone. But.
Well, just for clarification though, 4105 used to be policy 1520, which has been in existence since March 10th of 2014.
Okay.
It was revised on January 11th, 2016, and then revised again on July 28th, 2020. We did renumber the policy on August 12th, 2021. 4105F, which is the request to address the board form, that is brand new. That is not something that the district has previously had.
Okay.
It's part of School Board Association's policies manual. And so since we didn't have it, it is the policy committee thought, we should give people form to fill out so that we all know what we're doing and how they're getting there.
Right.
So 4105F is brand new. 4105 has been in existence. So we just renumbered it from 1520.
And there were a lot of language changes. There wasn't a way for a group of patrons, say you had 5, 10, or whomever in the community that maybe wanted to talk about the same thing. So instead of everybody spending 3 minutes, there was no way for a group to come together and address the board, maybe present slideshow, whatever they felt they needed to do. And the policy committee worked to create a group presentation. So now there is the option for people to create a group to come present before the board and all that. So little by little, of the 245 policies that existed in the district, there's probably triple that Idaho School Board Association recommends So it's been quite an undertaking, and then depending on what the committee is working on, we've had, the different people sit in HR, whomever, Ms. Sexton, whoever was.
And we'd love to have some parents in
Yeah.
there, correct? Like
Oh,
that-
yes.
that's parent, like anybody could come and volunteer to do this. If they don't like it, they could certainly come and try to change it, right?
Yeah.
If
Oh,
you
yeah,
want to change
absolutely.
something,
Yep.
maybe be the difference
Yep.
instead of the complainer. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
And of the policies presented, 2340 is also brand new. We did not have that policy previously, so it's brand new. 3520 has just been updated. That's the contagious and infectious disease that we were complimented on by Dr. Meyer for fixing.
And the form is to protect people in the event that someone has an issue that needs to be addressed in executive session, to make sure that that is properly addressed and that we don't step on any toes in terms of HR issues. Is that correct? Is that also part of the form?
Yes, the form
Okay.
addresses that. It makes sure that anything that would come to the board that shouldn't be before the board isn't handled that way. That,
Okay.
and that's clearly stated in the very first. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
It's to try and keep everything going in the correct direction.
Thank you.
It's in no way put in place for the board to pick and choose who they hear from, which has been.
Correct.
Has been a concern of the
A
public.
few, yes.
Yep. So I would just like to mention that this is a way of keeping order and making sure that people can be heard appropriately.
Correct. Any further discussion or comments?
No.
Then I will entertain a motion regarding the board policies that were presented.
I will move to the board policies as presented.
I'll second that.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We have already addressed the Rathdrum Police Department MOU. Moving on to the resolution for critical race theory.
I would move that we table this until we can do a little bit more cleanup on it. I appreciate the work that was done on it to strike through a lot of that. I still feel like we need to make sure that we're addressing the statute that was put in place.
Okay.
I'll
Any-
second that.
I agree, yep.
Was that a motion? Did you make that?
Yes.
Okay,
To table.
so.
Yes.
All right, having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can I
Any,
clarify, was that trustee Bain that seconded?
yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to discussion items, we have curriculum, secondary supplemental resources for first read on board approval, elementary supplemental resources for board approval, and then we have the second read on an elementary read, the character lab. Hello.
Hello. We are happy to answer any questions you might have about any of the materials that are on those requests for approval. And then just a reminder that those that are on the second read would come at the next board meeting for an action item to be approved.
Okay.
Are we looking at each of these individually or? Just
It's up for discussion. We can discuss it however we want.
I still was unable to get the social and emotional learning elementary curriculum with the digital print and SEL lessons. There was no password. I couldn't get in. I couldn't look at a sample of those. So just to let you know, I never received that.
Yeah, I still,
Can
yeah.
you open it right now? Mr. Massey said it should be wide open.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that. I apologize to interject.
No, you're fine.
I apologize, it was not open last time. It was just a problem with the link, and so I believe that I have opened it wide up. Trustees even requested additional access today, and I was able to grant that within just a few minutes. So I
Interesting.
apologize if there's an issue, but it should be all there for your viewing.
That's the character lab at the bottom
Correct.
of this.
Yeah.
For the
it's-
Garwood
it's the
Elementary.
same- It's the same.
That
it's
is
the
what
same
it is.
program.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
yes,
that,
I did look at that.
yeah.
Okay.
It's,
Mhm.
okay.
Now, when you click, just so you're aware, when you click on the hyperlink for the social emotional learning elementary curriculum with digital and print SEL lessons, it takes you to the teacherspayteachers.com website, and it shows you the product social emotional learning. If you go to preview included products, you then need to welcome to Teachers Pay Teachers, and you need to log in with a password.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a description included, but after Trustee Major asked for additional information, I contacted Mr. Massey and asked if he could give us some more details as far as how he plans on using it, what pieces, so you have more information.
Okay.
And he did put
The character
information
lab.
there for the board to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
That's
available
it.
for questions
Yeah.
tonight as well, but he did give that so we'd have,
And it's really detailed.
My only concern was sorry. The social awareness, how that is, piece, how that is presented. A lot of people that are concerned about social emotional learning, and that's what this, that I think that is our biggest concern. And I think that piece is where their concern comes into play.
Sure.
And like, how is that presented? You know, it says that this, I guess.
As was stated in the patron input, this is a Trojan horse for CRT. So I feel almost like I would be breaking Idaho law by approving this. So I really am having a moral and ethical as well as legal dilemma on this. Really struggling with that.
As am I. That was why I looked deeper and wanted to know more. I mean, you know, I guess, how is it presented? It says that it's the ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others. I teaching kids empathy. I just want to know how it is presented.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question, and quite frankly, I appreciate the concerns that you guys have. You know, I as a parent myself, I really respect that we want to know what's being taught in our schools. And so we want to lead with transparency and make sure that that's very available, which is why it's unfortunate that the link didn't work last time. So again, I apologize for that. First and foremost, I mean, we recognize the scope of our responsibility as an elementary school is our elementary school.
Right.
And really that is it. And so whenever we talk about social awareness in classrooms, in counselor lessons, really anywhere, it's within the scope of interactions on the playground or interactions in the classroom, conflicts that arise with kids. And often, as silly as that sounds, little things that come up on the playground that get brought into the classroom are the barriers to learning that prevent us from making progress with students. And so all of this that is embedded in this Character Lab program, and our idea for it is to pave the way for readiness to learn. In no way do we mean to reach outside of our school in terms of exposing students to different ideologies or different ways of thought. Very, very centered on what's happening in the school and how can we become ready to learn.
And what is this curriculum providing you that you wouldn't be able to find elsewhere?
That's a really good question. For us, it was a matter of, we appreciated the content from certain targeted lessons that are highlighted in that presentation, and also the cost of it. It's a very exciting access where it's easy for us to fill in the gaps for what we want to accomplish with this class. Yeah, there certainly are other programs out there that accomplish similar things.
I did notice that on the social awareness lesson plan, week 21 highlighted, and neither was week 18. So I'm assuming that means there's nothing that's going to be talked about with celebrating diversity or perspective taking.
That's the plan, correct. Yep.
Okay.
We specifically highlighted those lessons that we wanted to utilize from this program.
Okay.
And anything not highlighted would be left off of our scope and sequence for the class.
Okay.
Is it possible to bring that up on the screen so those that are here may be able to see that? It's under the character lab, I think is what the chair is referring to.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. If you scroll down to where it
Right
says
there, yeah.
free social, yeah, thank you very much.
Maybe make that a little bigger so people can kind of see.
It's actually page 12 we need.
Page
12, yeah. We're on 6.
Basically, everything that's highlighted would be taught, and those that are not highlighted would not be taught.
Right.
Is that too big or is that okay?
No,
I can see it. That's a good thing.
Let me know if you want me to scroll down. Is it okay?
Oh, wait, no, that's. It's actually page 10. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There we are. See, celebrating diversity.
I feel like my eyes are worse than yours, so I'm totally empathetic with you.
Yeah, like the social cues, understanding social cues. It's interesting.
That's really speaking more to nonverbal, so being able to read your brain and figure out, like, we do this a lot with our students identified with autism, and just, facial expressions, what that means, when people talk with their hands,
Right.
that type of thing. I would imagine, I haven't seen this program, but social cues in that sense of being able to recognize if somebody was angry, personal space boundaries, those types of things. Not all kids understand that or see that, intuitively, and so helping them being able to read some of those universal cues.
Okay.
But those, I'm sorry, I just have to, those are really culturally universal. They're not universal globally. So if you have a child who's in, I'll use my own background, if you have a child who's in a Spanish house or an Italian house, they're loud and hand moving and all this is not because they're mad and upset, it's because they're having a conversation.
Right.
Whereas another child might interpret that as you're angry and you're coming at me. So with respect to universal social cue, I personally have a problem with that because not everybody responds the same way. I understand what you're saying about nonverbal. We have to give them something, right?
Think back to what Mr. Massey said at the very beginning, some of that situational awareness that's specific to their school. So a lot of this is about conflict resolution. Is coming off of recess. The kids are struggling with something, and so adults being able to help them interact so that they're, able to rectify whatever's happened or understand the situation. I mean, all of those things play a part. So just really trying to equip kids with understanding of, you know, if they were really close to you, it wasn't intended to hurt your feelings or bother you, you know, that type of a thing. So still staying within that scope and understanding what little 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds deal with, and what's frustrating to one may not be frustrating to another, and that type of thing.
Okay. I guess what makes it hard is just looking at the words on the page. We don't know what the content of the thing is, right?
Point out and where
absolutely.
Access, at the very last slide, so after you get through kind of the context pieces, there is a link there to all of the lessons, every single one.
I missed that.
In their entirety.
Oh, okay.
And so all of those are available for you guys to take a look at.
That we don't have access to.
Yeah, it says you need to access
the one I
the
clicked.
Google Drive.
Okay. I apologize for that. So if you hit request access, I should get an email here very shortly. There it is.
Oh, yes, that was the one I clicked earlier.
So if you hit that request access, then this will come up.
Yep. I've just approved 4.
And you had already approved.
If there's any you want me to open right here, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't in good conscience approve this. I'm sorry.
It may be my own ineptness, but I can't get any of the PDFs to open.
What, if it would be helpful, I would be happy to like download these outside of Google Drive and provide them in a different format.
I can open them. I have access. So maybe it's something with your machine. We can, well, I guess we can look at it. Maybe
Yeah,
if we can't
it's-
get to it, we can ask.
We don't need to take.
Mr. Massey, yeah, I just
Yeah.
hate to have the 6 and Dr. Casley just.
Yeah.
She looks so
I
cute.
mean, we spend down this rabbit hole for hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this on our first read? Is this
This is a second read.
This is the second.
Yeah.
I would also be happy to go back and do a little bit more work with our character lab teacher and outline these in the sequence that we would be teaching them to kids, so that's what we're proposing. Just so that it's organized a little bit differently for you guys to look through.
So with respect to calling it the character lab, and you said there's a character lab teacher, correct? Okay. And it's probably just me, but character traits to me aren't necessarily social emotional skills. They're traits and then they're skills. So this person that's prior to any type of approval of this, what are they doing?
Our character lab is a specials class that students will visit once per week.
Okay.
Primarily to help them through the student-led conference process.
Okay.
So this would be a targeted place where they are working on setting academic goals.
Okay.
So I can do such and such in class. Getting support as a classroom community. And we also wanted this, I know you and I had several conversations about this last year, how we just have a large population of our students that are brand new to Lakeland, many of them brand new to Idaho.
Right.
As of this morning in Garwood, that's 35% of our kids are brand new to Garwood, many of them brand new to the state. And so this person would also just help foster a community.
Okay.
We want to make sure that those kiddos are onboarded is the word that comes to mind, but immediately integrated into the community through very intentional instruction of how we treat each other as friends and classmates.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that is the primary purpose.
Okay.
These lessons would come in as very, very supplemental. And so this would not be the primary curriculum for this teacher.
Okay. What other curriculum does the Character Lab utilize?
They will work through a pacing guide that we have created that is just basically a step-by-step through student-led conferences. So
Okay.
there's not really a curriculum there, but there are tasks
Okay.
to be done by students.
So the Character Lab then is focused on student-led conferences?
I would say student achievement.
Student achievement,
We're
okay.
tying it to our building goals by structuring it through the student-led conference process.
Okay.
In addition to that, she will use some of the second step curriculum so that her lessons are in alignment with what our school counselor is also providing.
Okay.
That is an approved curriculum for our school counselors.
Okay. Okay. I didn't realize there was a class for student-led conferences. I hear you say student achievement. I thought the student-led conference was basically about just taking the student achievements throughout the year for the parent conference and then letting the student lead that. So am I misunderstanding
No,
that?
you're absolutely correct. I think over the course of doing this now for 4 years,
Mhm.
3 years, 5 years, it has evolved into, we didn't want it to be just this event, but we really just wanted kids to start having some ownership in what they're learning, what their interests are, having some self-efficacy about the things like their organizational strategies, those pieces. So Mr. Massey is kind of trying to be a little bit out of the box about being more intentional and finding time for just
Okay.
helping them goal set. What does that look like? What's a measurable goal? What is an achievable goal? And then helping them, okay, so if your goal is a fluency goal, what are some of those pieces that you can do to help yourself to meet that goal? If you have an outside goal, last year there was a little guy that wanted to be a BMX bike rider, and so he wanted to be able to do 5 tricks, and so then there was a talk about, okay, well, what would you need to do daily? So is that eating healthy? Is that exercise? Those types of things. Again, not always intuitive to our little people, but just helping them pave that. If I want to achieve something, what's the work in between? I just can't get to that day and then hope that I get there.
Right.
So he's trying a really cool thing of, it's just there's a set intentional time. Teachers do that in the classroom all of the time, but now they'll have a specialist that's really helping them compile what that portfolio could look like. What are good things that you'd like to showcase? So we're looking at the whole child and not just, because it is definitely student achievement, but we were definitely looking at the whole child, because they have aspirations and dreams that have nothing to do with academics. It's like the BMX rider,
Right,
you know?
right.
So I think it's going to be amazing.
Okay, so then this is a new class that wasn't there last year and that is not in every school. Okay, okay. Alrighty, it's a little clearer.
Yeah, thank you for asking those clarifying questions. I realize that we're starting the explanation of Character Lab in kind of the backward spot with the
Right.
one supplemental resource, and we're building out to the big idea.
Right.
So again, I would be happy to come back and share the big idea if that would be helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate it.
Of course.
Do we want to have any further discussion on the curriculum registered items? I just keep looking at you two. I really need to turn my head this way. Sorry.
I do not. I do not.
Okay, Rob?
No, I really don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to the first read of Board Policy 4160. This is the parents' right to know notice. It is brand new. It's not a policy that we previously had, but really should have. There has not been too many modifications to the form that was provided to us from Idaho School Board Association. So when you're looking at it, the yellow highlight on policies means we don't have those, so we need to implement them as well. But yeah, please read through it. Does anyone have any questions, or having read through it prior to the meeting?
I did read through it and I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we did add on here because it was, for me, reading through it, it was a testing transparency notice, and then they referred immediately to assessments. So I'm like, well, shouldn't it be an assessment? So we added tests or mandatory tests or assessments because I got educated on the fact that there are some tests that aren't assessments that are required for us to do. So we just kind of made that a little bit more crisper so that people understood the scope of everything we were talking about, not just assessments, it's tests and assessments. Any further discussion?
No. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item up for discussion is Constitution Day. Oh, all righty. Hi.
This is one of my most favorite days, so I'm super excited. I'm not sure which trustee asked us to come up and just kind of speak.
I think it's trustee.
Okay.
Yes.
About Constitution Day. So our plan is on that day, we're going to go around to some schools and take some pictures and some video clips so you can kind of see some of the cool things that different schools are doing. But for elementary, there's lots of activities around the Constitution, Bill of Rights, talking about the authors, they're doing art activities, there's math activities, just spending the whole day just really infusing everything about the Constitution. So lots of really great ideas. So I'm hoping that we can get some really cool videos so you can see it in action with little people from kindergarten all the way to 5th grade.
And then at the secondary level, they will be their Hello Hawks, Tiger TV kind of morning messing about the Constitution. So see that, and then the social studies classrooms, they will have lessons that are geared toward the Constitution. And so our intention is at the next board meeting, we will bring to you the pictures and the video clips, but also a few students who can talk to you a little bit about what they did learn about the Constitution.
Which will be very cute.
That'd be great.
So you had asked the question, we wanted to just follow up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, just because of, we're obviously by federal law, but also by state statute. And I just didn't know if we did the whole week. A lot of everybody boils it down to one day, but it's really a long week learning celebration thing. I just wasn't sure how we were doing that, but that's great.
September 17th is set aside as Constitution Day. And so that's the day that where the primary focus is. In Mr. Keating's government class, they will be spending many days talking about the Constitution. So he's got that built into that week. So at the secondary level, that's how they do that.
And at the elementary level, they're definitely building some of that prior knowledge, but most of the activities on that one day are really centered around.
Right.
Yeah, it's an amazing day. The teachers do some great creative things. It's a really great day.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion on the Jewel lawsuit. Dr. Meyer, can you?
I just provided this. This is something that came from the ICRP attorney for the state. We're sending it out to all districts. My understanding in talking to the attorney this week, there's 4 districts in the state. It's starting in Utah. I just wanted to provide you with the information. I'm not recommending for or against this. It does no cost to the district. My understanding is if the plaintiffs win, then every district that signs up, it's like one of those big
Class action.
Then
You get $1.22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the, and so maybe it's not, that's exactly. And the attorney takes off their slice and that would be money.
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I know there's several districts in Region 1 that are having their board look at it within the next 2 weeks. So I just wanted to make sure and provide you the information. I didn't want to just say no and
Right.
yet, obviously, and then you would have to say if you want to join on. So I'm happy that.
I looked into it. There's strength in numbers. I'm game. It's wrong to market stuff like that to kids. That's awful. So I'm all for it.
And no, the superintendent did bring it to me and I asked her to put it, we put it on for discussion because I felt
Thank
like
you.
as a board,
Yes.
we needed to discuss whether or not we want to pursue or partake or whatnot,
Thank you.
participate, whatever the right word is. Any discussion?
I have no discussion. No questions.
Rob looks like he's contemplating a thought.
Oh, there's just a lot of information in there.
Yeah, there is.
I don't support anything.
Well, that's good to hear, Rob. Yeah, vaping is pretty toxic. It's not good.
So Board Chair Thompson, if the board would like, I can bring back, I can send the board just any additional information she's given me, and then I can put it on the next agenda for an action item. The board can at that time choose whether we join or not join.
Okay. Is it something we would have to do on the next meeting, or can it be pushed out if need be? Is there a time frame on
I will
this?
find that out.
Okay, that would be great because,
Yep, I will find that out.
perfect. Because it is a lot of literature and I don't know how much time everyone has to designate to that. Next up for discussion is the Board of Trustees strategic plan.
Spoken with
Constituent Craig Worth who is very concerned that the board does not have a strategic plan. And we do not have a vision for the superintendent. It's my understanding, I did ask Rob at the last meeting, has the board ever, and from your time on the board, you don't recall it ever occurring, having a strategic plan. Is that correct still?
I mean, we have expectations, but nothing spelled out.
Right. Okay. So
Well, we are required by board policy to provide that.
to provide
have
a strategic plan.
That plan. Expectation.
And I did share that with the board. I shared our strategic plan that we had my first year, second year, third year, and then the continuous, it was changed by law to the continuous improvement plan. So
Okay.
we do have that.
Okay.
So when they're talking about a strategic plan, and I did share in the board update, I linked in all of those for you. So we have had a strategic plan and or / what you call continue. If you're in business, they call it a strategic plan.
Right.
So we do have one of these and we've had one every year. I just want the public to know we do have one.
Okay.
And I'm happy the board gets to decide what those goals are. So
Right.
we can certainly change whatever you want to do.
Well, we have the workshop coming up on Monday,
Monday.
correct? Yeah, for the strategic improvement plan.
Yep.
I know when we went through it last year, and it was, it was kind of new. So going through it, it seemed, pre-filled with certain things, requirements, et cetera. And then I know my big push was math. It's like, why are we not looking at math? But I don't recall creating a vision. So I guess when we're in that workshop, we can kind of talk about where all of this is going to push us. Okay.
If I can just interject, so the SIP plan does contain all those components.
Right.
It is available on the website. It's always been on the website.
Yes.
All those things that would be in a quote strategic plan live there. The only other piece I can think that somebody might be looking for is the long range facility planning, but it's my understanding that Mr. Burt sat on that, so that must not be what he's looking for. But the SIP plan does include that. It includes a mission, includes a vision, includes the core beliefs. That's all required under statute. We cannot not have it. It is what runs the district. It is what sets the goals that Dr. Meyer looks at. And to see how this is going to be implemented.
Right.
It is what the board says. Why aren't we looking at math?
Right.
You know, why aren't we? So I think maybe Mr. Wertz needs to be guided to the SIP plan and maybe explanation or the statute of what the SIP plan actually is, because it is exactly what he's looking for.
Okay, perfect.
It's just not.
Okay, are we-
strategic plan.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay, there is board policy 1620.
Right.
It says each year, the board will formulate annual objectives for the district and have
Right.
available written comprehensive philosophy of education with goals which reflect the district's philosophy of education.
Right.
So is that the SIP plan?
Absolutely.
Okay, but that's,
And that came directly from Idaho School Boards Association. So like Dr. Meyer shared, the statute was changed by the legislature and the wording, it no longer was the strategic plan. It's now continuous improvement plan with all of these other elements attached to it. And if you open the SIP plan, you'll see that it contains, I mean, unless there's other elements people are looking for, what the board's goal or the district's goal, mission, vision, outside of what we read at every meeting, what the expectation is. All of those things are in there because this is something also that has to be turned into the state too. It's actually, it states all of the statute, and it's all in there, but that is what the 1620 is referring to.
Okay.
And it does have all those pieces. I mean, we can change or add language, I guess. What was that verbiage again, Trustee Bain?
each year, the board will formulate annual objectives for the district and have available a written comprehensive philosophy of education with goals which reflect the district's philosophy of education. The philosophy of education and goals shall be in writing and shall be available to the district staff and to the public.
So I guess we should insert the word, maybe you may find this in, or this is the continuous improvement plan.
Something, just something to link, like kind of put the two together and
Can you put
cross-reference each other.
on the policy plan, policy committee's radar?
Yeah,
Just
and maybe on the
because-
SIP plan, say that this is in.
Well, there's no statutory reference on our policy, so I'm concerned that this isn't targeted at the SIP plan. And I need to know if it needs to be, or if this is a whole different leg. Because if it is targeted at the SIP plan, there should be language in there, or there should be reference, statutory reference. So that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
So it was like, I wasn't sure if that was that, or if it,
Right, no, I
if
understand.
we needed to do, create some additional objectives that the SIP plan, like kind of back, I guess, maybe back into it, if you will, that the SIP plan would in turn help us reach those goals
Right,
and objectives.
right.
So,
That's where I was like,
yeah.
I don't know, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's exactly what this is speaking to, and it's exactly what Dr. Meyer does. She comes, she reports on those things. How is it met? How do we not meet it? She gives us the testing, the IRI, but yeah, maybe we just need to update the language and definitely reference the statute. That would be a good idea.
yes, it would be great.
And I do love the idea of, and we'll talk about it on Monday, but I do think the long-range facility plan, that piece, I don't want that to fall between the cracks because we are at a spot where, remember, our plant facility levy is coming off the books, our bonds are gonna be coming off in 2023, and we obviously have a lot of growth, so that, I think, Trustee Grissom, your idea of putting that into and combining it, so it's one document, I think would be helpful for the patrons as well.
Mhm.
And then cross-reference that policy to those plans to show that they're in conjunction with and to meet those objectives.
Yes. Moving on, any further discussion? I'm moving on. Parliamentarian board training is the next item for discussion.
Excuse me, sorry, I was the one who asked for this to be put on here, and I think it would be great, especially considering the newest edition and that she might benefit along with all the rest of us. I don't know how, I don't know what the steps are to make this happen. I just really want to make sure that all of us can be as effective as we can be, and that we are following the law, that we're following statute, that we're following our own policies. And I think it might be helpful to have somebody come and give us some instruction and guidance.
Okay.
Well, parliamentary procedure is how the meeting is ran. It won't necessarily be teaching us our own policies.
Sure, we
but
need
it
to
would
know that ourselves,
teach,
yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
A better decorum of maybe motions or whatever. I did follow up on some of that. I do have one name, but I have not contacted him. So I can't say, here, call this person. However, I was also told that ICRIMP provides that training and that they've provided it for other entities.
Oh, that's good to know. That would be a good resource.
Yeah. So maybe we can start there also, and if they don't have, then we can start pulling from the community. But even when you look at the parliamentary register, they're the closest ones over in Washington. Yeah.
Janelle, would you mind looking into that a little bit? Thank you. Okay.
So I did do some follow-up with that, because I do agree with the parliamentary procedure. It might make things a little easier and more clear.
Make sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's properly.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I think that's a great idea. Yep, and I think ICRIMP would be a good starting point too.
I think so too. Any further discussion on that? All right, moving on to input for future agenda items. Does anybody have any input for future agenda items?
I would, I want to make sure that with the way that curriculum is now being brought to the board as it states that it should in statute, it hasn't been that way. And I think there's a lot of growing pains and issues with people kind of trying to figure, mainly teachers, trying to kind of figure out exactly how all this is going to look going forward.
Okay.
And I think maybe it might be prudent of us to discuss how maybe we could support them better, so that if they needed to add a supplement, let's say they do their lesson planning a few months ahead of time and they needed to add a supplement that wasn't, or even a month ahead of time, that wasn't approved, that maybe there would be some way that they could get that approved so that they could teach that class and make sure that they add that supplement. And also I want to make sure they understand also that that's not there to provide a roadblock for them. It's more there to help them, so that if we approve the curriculum and something goes awry in the curriculum, that the consequence for doing such a thing falls on the board. So it actually is kind of taking the heat off the teacher and putting it on the board where it needs to be, because we don't want our teacher, at least I don't want our teachers to be put in a position where they're having to have the angry mob come after them and come after me.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe, I'm trying to see, do we have any curriculum policies, Chrissy, that you're aware of? Because I don't find any.
Yeah, there's policy on curriculum. I would have to.
There's a whole curriculum page.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, it's called instruction.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, got it.
100.
I'm too tired. Yeah, I see that.
I mean, there's quite a few. I don't know what you're.
Well, obviously, we need to modify our policy or policies to incorporate expectations for curriculum coming to the board, etc.
So 2520 is curricular materials, and it does kind of outline our responsibility for approving. So maybe in conjunction with that, we can do, because there's, we have the ability to create a curricular materials committee.
Right, which we don't have,
Mhm.
that I'm aware of.
No,
Is that correct? Okay.
it's a duty of the board. That's part of what I asked for was the curriculum committee, policy committee, and budget committee. So this, I mean, basically 2520 does outline similar to what Trustee Major was talking about, but and it looks like it just recites a lot of statute.
Mm-hmm.
And we did go over this in July.
Yes, I
This
see
year.
that. I see that. But I know that, where I had heard that it's being presented like it takes months to get anything approved.
Oh,
And I don't think that that's an appropriate perception of our responsibility. And to me, that seems like we're creating obstacles like you spoke of, and that we're not motivated to make sure teachers have their resources, students are being taught, which is our job. I mean, it's the job of education to teach these kids, and the teachers definitely need their resources. So I don't want it, I don't think this policy reflects any sort of process of time. So, you know, like Mr. Massey's bringing this now, and then, you know, we had the 2 weeks before and 2 weeks now, and then next meeting we vote. So that's a 6-week window. That's not a 4-month window or a half a year window. I mean, that's just, it's nonsense. So with respect to what you're saying, I do think there needs to be guidelines so that there's a clear understanding for the teacher. If they do come across something, it may not be approved tomorrow, but it's definitely not going to be 6 months down the road. That there is a process, you know, it's 2 weeks and 2 weeks and then approved. And that I know is not reflective in the policy, so. However, with a curriculum committee, the benefit of that would be there would be more eyes on deck, more hands on deck, more of an ability for things to get streamlined so that it doesn't seem quite so cumbersome to approve the curriculum. At least that's my thought. Okay, so based on what you said for future agenda items, we need to put the committees out there so that we can start getting parent involvement.
yeah, we'll have to come up with, I mean, how are all those people, the statute's very explicit on who has to be involved in the curriculum adoption. Budget, I don't remember. I mean, that is one public input governance of the board.
Right.
That has to go to the public, well, budget and curriculum both, but yeah, we can do that. The board can do that, whoever's doing it.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I will, any other future items? I'm moving on again without y'all.
Nope.
Okay. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to enter into executive session per Idaho Code 742061 subsection D.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
No.
Oh, roll call vote. I always forget.
Trustee Bain.
Yes.
Trustee Nature.
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes.
Trustee Grissom.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Yes.
We need to close right here and shut everything. So you just- Please, I'm going to my mouth.
Okay, so the nice part is you can admit all back into the meeting. And then we gotta plug it in. And we're gonna turn that.
Yeah, we record it because it gives us an option to pause it. I'm gonna switch the cameras. Yep, all good.
Okay, so we've come out of executive session. At this time, I'll entertain a motion regarding the district crisis plan.
I'll make a motion to table the district crisis plan.
I'll second that motion.
Hearing a motion in a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that concludes the meeting at 8:41.
Thanks for finding my lid. It fell during the meeting and I thought, oh, just let it be down there.
No worries.
It's not gonna hurt anything.